Welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege to read Parshas Vayera. And the Parsha opens up, Avram Avinu, a few days post-circumcision, a few days after his bris milah, is sitting outside of his tent, Kechol Mayom, in the heat of the day. And Avram Avinu is looking for one thing. He's looking for archim. He's looking for guests. He wants to welcome people into his tent. He wants to use the meal, the hospitality, as an opportunity to spread the knowledge and the beauty of the Ribono Shel Olam HaKadosh Baruch Hu to all who will listen. And as he's sitting there, the Gemara says, Vayar, he sees Shlosha Anoshim, 3 men. Vayoratz likrasam, he runs to go ahead and greet them. And then he says the following pasuk. The Torah says, this is in Parak Yurches, Pasuk Gimel, chapter 18, verse 3, Vayomer Adonai, Im nomatza sichin be'einecha anata avar me'al avdecha. Now the Pashup Pshat, the simple reading of this is that Avram is speaking to the people. I mean, they're angels, they're malachim, but he thinks they're men. He says to the guy who looks like the leader of the chevra, the leader of the bunch, and he says, Adonai, my master, please don't pass by. You're right in front of my tent. Please come in and enjoy some of my hospitality. But Rashi quotes something amazing. Rashi quotes the Gemara that explains that in fact that word Adonai is not a reference to a human being, but rather it is a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because see, dear friends, what's happening at the beginning of Parshas Vayera? The Torah says, Vayera elav Hashem. Hashem appeared to Avram. And Rashi says, Hashem is being mevaker chole. He's visiting the sick. Avram Avinu is ill. Having a circumcision at such an advanced stage is not a simple thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming to visit Avram Avinu. So you have to imagine the scene that God is sitting with Avram. God is visiting with Avram Avinu, and Avram sees these guests. And what does Avraham do? He essentially gets up, leaves HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to welcome in the guests. So Rashi says, Vayomer, the Adonai is not a reference to human being. It's not a reference to one of the men, but rather it's a reference to Hashem. And Avram is saying to Hashem, Hashem, please, don't leave. Wait here for me. I'll be back in a little bit. Let me go and get these guests. Let me go and retrieve these individuals. Welcome them into my home. Feed them, take care of them, physically nourish them, spiritually nourish them. But Hashem, don't leave. Wait for me. And the Gemara says something amazing. The Gemara says in Masechah Shabbos, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, the great sage Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav, Gedola hachnasas archim me'akbalas pnei hashchina. You see from here that hospitality, welcoming guests into your home, is even more important than receiving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How can you say such a thing like that? Well, here's the proof. Avram was receiving the Shekhinah. He was receiving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was sitting with God. And yet when the opportunity to go ahead and express his hospitality towards fellow human beings was before him, he left HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he went to welcome in his human guests. Kidola hachnasas archim me'akbalas pnei hashchina. Welcoming guests into your home. Hospitality is even more important. Gedola, it's even greater than receiving the divine countenance, than receiving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's another statement in the Talmud. And the other statement in the Talmud appears in Maseches Shavuos. And at first glance, it appears to be saying the same exact thing. But there's one interesting nuance difference. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, it's even the same author. Same person, Rav Yehuda, saying in the name of Rav, Gedola hachnasas archim yoser mehakbalas pnei hashchina. Hachnasas archim is greater, yoser, even more than kabbalas pnei hashchina, than receiving the divine countenance. It's the same theme. That welcoming in human guests, hospitality, hachnasas archim, is even greater than receiving the divine countenance. But the second Gemara Masechah Shavuos adds in one more word, yoser. Yoser, gedola hachnasas archim. Hachnasas archim is greater, yoser, more than kabbalas pnei hashchina, than receiving the divine countenance. And the great tzaddik, the Divrei Bina, the Biala Rebbe, Rav Yitzchak Yaakov Horowitz, who lived from 1766 to 1813, asks a simple question. Why did the Gemara have to add in the word yoser, more? In other words, the first Gemara made the point, Gedola hachnasas archim mekabbalas pnei hashchina. Receiving guests, hospitality is greater than receiving the divine countenance. Why does the second Gemara have to say Gedola hachnosas archim yoser, even more than Kabbalah's Penei Ashchina? What is it adding? What is that one word yoser, more, adding that the first Gemara didn't convey? And the Rebbe says something truly beautiful. He says, in general, when you share something with someone else, so generally, whatever you give away is less for you. It's less for you. Okay, so if I have money, and I choose to go ahead and share my money with someone else, although I've benefited someone, Reuven, who I'm sharing it with, has more, I have less. You have a cake, you decide to give someone a slice of the cake, there's less cake for you. That's just the Metzias. And the Rebbe says something so incredibly beautiful. He says, there's one exception to this rule. One exception, which is a nursing mother. When a mother nurses her child, the more she nurses, the more milk she has. The more she gives to the baby, the more her supply replenishes. Conversely, if she doesn't nurse the baby, the milk supply ultimately dries up. And says the Rebbe, isn't that fascinating? That one of the first lessons we see in life, right? One of the first form of sustenance that we have, our mother's milk. The more the mother gives, the more she gets. The less she gives, the less she gets. It says the Rebbe something amazing. It is to instill in us from a very young age this notion that the more you give, the more you get. You see, it's not true. Even though in the material world, physically, it looks like that when we give something to someone else, we are left with less, in the grand scheme of things, that is unequivocally false. The more you give, the more you share, the more you get. And says the Rebbe, this is true in a material way, that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that I'm going ahead and using my material wealth, using my material possessions to benefit others, to give to others, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this person is a good custodian of my wealth. He's a good custodian of my material bounty. I'm going to give him more, because if I give him more, he's going to share more. And it's true on every single level. The more we give, the more we put ourselves out there for others, is the more we receive. The more we give, the more we get. And so from the first lesson we learn as infants, the first lesson we learn in life, even before we could organize these thoughts into a coherent message, and even before we could articulate our understanding, from the baby's nursing from the mother, the baby learns the lesson, the more you give, the more you get. And says the Rebbe, that's the pshat in the Gemara. See, there's two lessons being taught here. Lesson number one is that yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu values hachnosas archim. He values us being there and sitting and taking care of other people more than he values us sitting and being with him, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But on a deeper level, the second Gemara is teaching us an additional lesson. Gidola hachnosas archim. Hachnosas archim is great. Why is it great? Yoser. Because the more you give to others, yoser, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give to you. Gedola hachnasas archim yoser, you'll get even more of Kabbalah's Penei Ashchina. The more you give to others, the more God will give of Himself to you. First Gemara teaches me that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is okay if we leave Him in order to go out and take care of other people. Because sometimes the ability to take care of another human being is even more important than sitting in the presence of God. And lesson number two, lest you think that the more hachnasas archim, the more you give, the less you have. No. Gidol hachnasas archim, giving to others is so incredible. Why? Yoser, because you will be given more mikabalas Penei Ashchina from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The more you give, the more you get. The more you do, the more you receive. That is the way the world works. From the time that we're babies, we learn this from our mothers. The more the mother gives, the more she gets. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to us, the more you give in life, the more you will get as well. And this is such an incredibly important yesod. Because so often in life we walk around thinking just the opposite. I have to be careful with what I give. Now, of course, it's true. Even Chazal say you can't give away all of your money if it's tzedakah, right? There's a cap on even how charitable one is permitted to be. but as an approach to life, so many times, we're offered the opportunity to be there for others, to help others, but we think twice about it because you know what? If I give to you, there's less for me. And whatever that is, whether it's my money, or sometimes it's my skills, or sometimes it's my time. I want to have that time for me. I don't want to have it. And it's true, we have to carve out time for ourselves as well. But the one thing we should never think, the one mindset that we have to chase away is this notion of the more you give, the less you have. HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaches this to Avram Avinu. Or the truth is, Avram Avinu teaches it to us. Gedola hachnosas archim yoser mekabalas panei hashchina. The more you give to others, yoser, the more you will have from HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekabalas panei hashchina. The more you give, the more you get. We are every day we have opportunities to give and to do. And so often, even if we get excited about those opportunities, we stall out a little bit because, hey, I don't want to deal with less. I don't want to have less. But Avram Avinu teaches us, the Ribbon Shalom teaches us, a mother teaches us that the more you give, the more you get. We should be Zochem Yirtz Hashem to take advantage of the opportunities to give of our time, to give of ourselves, to give of our resources, to benefit and to uplift the other. And the schus, in the schus of all of our giving, Emir Hashem, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu replenish everything that we give. May we be Zochem Yirtz Hashem to the bracha of Yoser. May we be Zochem Yirtz Hashem to live lives of the more you give, the more you get. Wishing everyone a good and Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.